The caves display subtle rhythmic patterns that intrigue researchers who monitor them over years. Sensors positioned at key junctions record fluctuations in temperature, velocity, and dissolved compounds. When these data streams are analyzed across extensive timescales, they reveal oscillations that neither correspond to surface tides nor match predictable tectonic cycles. Instead, the cave appears to exhibit its own internal rhythm, shaped by a combination of mineral swelling, microbial growth, and fluid migration. One driving factor is the deep brine that seeps slowly from ancient strata. This brine is supersaturated with salts and has a density distinct from the surrounding seawater. It tends to flow along the lowest points of the cave system, generating thin rivers that move with calm yet inexorable persistence. As these rivers encounter pockets of reactive minerals, they deposit or dissolve crystalline layers in small increments. Over time, these changes alter the geometry of the floors and walls, prompting adjustments in the overlying corridors. Above the brine channels, lighter seawater responds dynamically to minor shifts in pressure. When a corridor narrows slightly, the water accelerates, reducing local pressure and drawing more flow from adjacent chambers. This sets off a chain reaction in which deformation, flow rate, and pressure continuously influence one another. The effect resembles the beating of a slow pulse as different sections of the cave alternately constrict and relax. Microbial communities enhance these oscillations. Their metabolic cycles depend on the supply of chemical reactants delivered by the currents. When conditions improve, they increase biomass and expand their mats. This growth adds friction to the walls and redistributes flow paths. Eventually, some communities reach a threshold where their own expansion triggers a decline in nutrient availability. Their populations contract, reducing drag and allowing circulation to accelerate once more. These cycles differ among species and create a layered temporal pattern that overlays the physical oscillations of the cave. Chemical signals produced by the organisms also influence mineral transformations. Some microbes release acids or ligands that promote dissolution. Others precipitate minerals that harden surfaces. As communities wax and wane, they modulate the availability of ions in the water. This changing chemistry affects the solubility of the cave walls and floors. The result is an intricate interplay in which life and mineral matter continuously modify one another. Over centuries, these processes generate larger-scale migratory patterns within the labyrinth. Corridors shift from central arteries to marginal channels. Entire loops become dormant while new ones rise to prominence. The cave adapts to preserve a balance between energy input and dissipation. If too much reactant-rich water flows through a section, it may foster excessive microbial growth that chokes the passage. If too little arrives, the communities die back and the corridor becomes chemically inert. Through repeated cycles, the system discovers configurations that maintain moderate but sustainable activity. In this sense, the cave expresses a form of mineral life. It does not metabolize in the biological sense. Yet it maintains homeostasis, reacts to environmental changes, and exhibits long-term persistence of structure through feedback processes. The rhythmic pulse it generates is a signature of its internal negotiations. Each oscillation subtly alters the network in a manner that favors long-lived stability. The labyrinth evolves slowly, yet deliberately, as if protecting the delicate balance of physical and biological processes that animate its interior. The title of monster may seem strange when applied to a geological feature, yet the cave network earns it not through malice, but through scale, behavior, and autonomy. In myth, a monster is often a presence that occupies a hidden realm and influences those who approach it. The cave system does something similar. It reshapes itself without external direction. It consumes the energy supplied by chemical gradients. It responds to perturbations with coordinated shifts, and it modifies its environment in irreversible ways. These traits collectively evoke an emergent entity rather than a passive structure. Exploration vehicles that map the interior witness this presence indirectly. Each visit presents a changed landscape. Walls migrate, roofs settle, and floors rise. Sensors record fluctuations that ripple through the chambers long after instruments withdraw. Even regions with no measurable deformation at the surface of the rock display changes in chemical signatures, indicating that unseen processes continue in remote pockets. the labyrinth does not rest. It adjusts continuously in pursuit of stable flow and efficient energy use. The monster metaphor becomes especially apt when considering the extent of its reach. Most labyrinths end in confined chambers or blocked passages. This one appears to connect with deep fractures that descend into the crust. Brines emerging from these depths carry minerals and isotopes that originate far below typical cave systems. Some analyses suggest that the labyrinth acts as an enormous breathing organ that draws in seawater and exhales chemically transformed fluid at intervals governed by processes deep within the earth. The network also expands outward. Some corridors grow wider year by year. Others collapse in one region while reappearing in another as the stone flows under pressure. The physical boundaries of the cave therefore wander across the slope like a restless creature exploring its territory. This expansion is not unrestrained. It follows gradients of pressure and mineral composition. Yet the pattern suggests purposeful adjustment, as if the system sought to optimize its overall architecture. Within the darkness, microbial communities contribute to the entity's collective behavior. Their growth and decline shape the cave in ways that reinforce stable circulation patterns. Their metabolic products influence mineral dissolution and precipitation. They form a living skin that coats the labyrinth walls and preserves a memory of past conditions. Through thousands of species acting in concert, the biological component of the system becomes an active partner in the ongoing evolution of the network. The monster remains indifferent to human presence. Remote instruments detect its rhythms, but do not alter them. Chemical tracers injected into one entrance may emerge at another, with compositions changed beyond simple mixing. The labyrinth absorbs disturbances into its own cycles. It does not retaliate or retreat. It simply continues to reorganize according to principles that emerge from the interaction of stone, water, and life. To describe the cave in such terms is not to assign consciousness to rock and fluid. Rather, it acknowledges that complexity can arise where matter and energy flow through intricate feedback loops. The monster hiding inside the Undersea Cave Network is the network itself. It is the shifting architecture that remembers, adapts, and persists. It is the emergent order that transforms geological time into something almost animate. In the end, the labyrinth stands as a reminder that life and lifelike behavior blur at the edges. The ocean floor holds many mysteries, but few are as compelling as this vast dynamic system. It lies far from sunlight, yet pulses with ceaseless activity. It appears silent, yet carries the memory of countless changes. And in the endless dark, it continues to reshape itself, a monster built of stone and water, hiding in plain sight beneath the waves. Far below the restless surface of the open ocean, the last rays of sunlight fade into a deepening blue and then vanish entirely. This region belongs to pressure and patience. Over geological ages, stone yields to moving water in patterns so slow that they defy ordinary comprehension. Along the flank of a continental rise, an immense undersea cave system extends for many kilometers. It is a labyrinth carved into alternating layers of limestone, basalt, and pockets of ancient evaporites. From a distance, the network appears to be a typical product of marine erosion, but close study reveals a structure far stranger than anything expected from simple dissolution. The entrances are scattered along a fault scar that arcs across the slope. Some openings are tall enough for a multi-story building, while others barely admit a narrow probe. Inside, the ceilings shimmer with microbial films that draw energy not from sunlight, but from chemical reactions in circulating fluids. Stalactite forms crust the upper surfaces, while rubble and silt settle into long drifts on the floors. What seems ordinary becomes uncanny when repeated mapping missions are compared. Sonar images collected months apart reveal corridors that do not remain stable. Segments that once ended abruptly now extend into new chambers. Junctions once mapped as straight joints bend into curves. Shapes migrate across meters of space, even though the stone never fractures in catastrophic collapse. The mutability is not the result of instrument error. Teams use multiple modes of scanning and repeat the measurements under controlled conditions. Although the changes occur slowly on a human scale, they are far too rapid for typical tectonic or erosional processes. The walls do not crumble or melt. Instead, they shift in subtle increments like soft clay pressed under unrelenting pressure. Layers rich in clays and salt-bearing minerals swell when saturated with seawater. As they expand, they force the surrounding rock to deform. Microfractures open and close, allowing brines from deeper layers to seep across surfaces and lubricate further displacement. These adjustments accumulate until the shape of an entire passage alters by tens of centimeters. Mineral physics explains only part of the situation. The cave is not simply deforming at random. Over time, the entire network organizes itself in ways that appear to favor directed circulation. The corridors form intertwined loops that guide incoming currents along increasingly efficient routes. Narrow sections shrink further while parallel channels widen. Blind pockets merge into continuous galleries. When viewed in full, the shifting resembles the gradual selection of stable configurations rather than chaotic rearrangement. Chemical gradients play a central role in this process. Within the cave, boundaries of temperature, salinity, and dissolved gases intersect to create pockets of abundant chemical energy. Microbial communities colonize these boundaries in dense mats. As the rock shifts and alters the flow paths of water, the gradients migrate, and the microorganisms follow. Their growth modifies the porosity and texture of the surfaces they inhabit. Over time, they become both record and agent of the ongoing reshaping of the labyrinth. The result is an environment that behaves less like an inert geological structure and more like a slow evolving organism without a central core. It exhibits preference and persistence in its constitution of pathways. It demonstrates memory in its retention of shapes that support stable circulation. It responds to outside conditions with internal reorganization. Although its activity is driven entirely by physical and biological processes known to science, the cumulative effect suggests the emergence of something greater than the sum of its mineral and microbial parts. To comprehend the cave network, it is crucial to consider the nature of deep ocean water. At these depths, currents advance with remarkable steadiness. Their movement is governed not by surface winds or tides, but by the density differences created by temperature and salinity. One such current flows close to the continental slope and encounters the chain of cave entrances. Part of the stream is drawn inside and divided among many tunnels before returning to the open sea some distance downslope. Within this maze, the current transforms into a complex pattern of jets, eddies, and stratified sheets. Narrow constrictions accelerate the water into forceful streams that scour sediment into suspension. Broad chambers allow fine particles to settle. Slight differences in ceiling height or slope produce internal cascades where heavier brine layers descend beneath lighter water in thin shifting planes. Each corridor becomes a functional component of a fluid circuit with its own resistance, storage capacity, and mixing behavior. Since the cave network continually deforms, the hydraulic circuit evolves with it. A passage that widens imperceptibly over months can acquire dramatically greater throughput. A new microfracture between two chambers establishes a previously non-existent shortcut. These changes alter the locations where different fluids meet. The gradients in energy-rich compounds shift accordingly, transforming the biological landscape. Microbial mats respond vigorously to the new configuration. They grow most quickly where currents deliver fresh reactants. Their three-dimensional structures trap particles and increase surface roughness. This enhances drag in the moving water, further modifying velocity profiles. Some groups thrive in swift flow because nutrients pass rapidly over them. Others prefer quiet pools where chemistry remains steady. As each community reinforces conditions favorable to its own metabolism, corridors that once supported a particular flow regime gradually strengthen their identity. Through this coupling of fluid dynamics and microbial activity, a distributed memory emerges. Surfaces that hosted strong currents for years become optimized for that condition by the communities that inhabit them. When temporary disturbances shift the circulation, the physical structure of the surfaces encourages a return to the prior state. The cave network therefore retains a history of past flows and uses that history to shape future behavior. Occasional rupture events interrupt the gradual cycle. Thickening salt layers break open. Blocks settle into hidden cavities. New chambers connect in unexpected patterns. These rare transitions can rewire large sections of the network, Formerly dominant loops close, replaced by alternate routes that host entirely new microbial successions. The cave exhalations respond accordingly. Instruments placed near the outflow record drifting concentrations of dissolved gases, trace metals, and isotopic ratios. The chemical signature of the cave becomes a chronicle of its interior transformations. To human observers, the long-term trends resemble choices made by a system intent on optimizing stability and diversity. Nothing supernatural is required to explain the phenomenon. All mechanisms fit within known science. Yet the interplay is so intricate that it mimics the characteristics of learning. Energy and matter thread through pathways constrained by the history of previous flows. The labyrinth becomes an evolving matrix that favors conditions generating reliable throughput with minimal internal conflict. We upload new videos every single day, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps the channel grow. Tell us in the comments what you'd like to see next. Your ideas might be in our next upload. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of our community. Stay tuned, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.